there were parts of my life that shaped me deeply, things that weren't talked about, things that you were expected just to endure. As a child, you don't have the language for that. You learn how to survive. And that survival teaches you strength. And it also teaches you to disconnect from yourself. So for a long time, I lived like that, strong on the outside, but unsure who I was, allowed me to be on the inside.
This is Chocolate and Coffee Break, a compassionate proposition, a space to share stories, bridge divides, and spark meaningful connections. So grab your chocolate, pour your cuppa, and let's break down barriers, one conversation at a time. And now, here's your host, Andrea Pudding.
Welcome to another episode of Chocolate and Coffee Break. So I hope you've got your chocolate and your cuppa and you're ready to listen to another beautiful story. So today's Chocolate and Coffee Break isn't about what happened to someone, it's about who we become because of it. My guest, Kabinga Mazabi, brings a deep understanding of empathy, belonging, and what it means to let people be who they are. This is a conversation about finding peace without denying pain and discovering the quiet power of simply being human. So pour your cuppa, take a breath, and join me for this beautiful conversation with Kabinga Mazabi. Now, welcome, Kabinga. It's lovely to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much, Andrea. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, and I'm sure we are going to have a great conversation. So I'd like to start my show with a heart-opening question from my little pack. And today's question is, what does home feel like to you beyond a place?
Andrea, home has become a sanctuary. It's a place where you feel safe, secure, and at peace. Not just from the outside, from the inside within, because for a long time I thought home was somewhere out there, a country, a culture, a community I had to fit into. I kept searching for it externally, but after moving across places and stages of life, it became emotional and mental safety. Now it's about being able to excel, able to breathe, to soften, to exist without performing or proving a point to somebody else. And that understanding actually changed the way I relate to people, places, even myself. So now home is beyond, it's that internal inner peace, internal sanctuary where you find solace and refuge. And that has become quite important and profound for me.
And it's really important that we recognize that home can be anywhere in the world. And like you were born in Zambia and you now live in Australia. Where else? Just fill in that little gap between those two places.
Oh, wow. Being born in Zambia and living in different cultures actually taught me that we humans are actually similar than we realize. When you move across countries and communities, our comfort zone have changed. So coming from Zambia, born there, I moved to South Africa, then Scotland, Edinburgh, then Australia. And South Africa taught me something different, resilience and complexity. Edinburgh gave me a place to reflect and listen, and Australia has given me permission to begin again with according to my own values, my wants and needs, and how I want to lead my life. So I've learned that belonging and movement and culture isn't actually tied to where you're from. It's shaped by how you relate, how you listen, how you show up. So every place I've lived in taught me a different lesson, not just about culture, but about myself as well and other people as well.
Yeah, so it must be a fascinating journey to live in different countries and to have to adapt to such different cultures, because I can imagine that living in Edinburgh was completely different to living in Zambia or South Africa, and then having to adapt and find your space in that new culture.
Yes. Yeah, it was quite different. And then you find that like I said, we humans are so similar with our own challenges culturally or what we go through as humans. And we all want that sense of belonging, that sense of validation. And that's what makes culture and identity really interesting, because we're all searching for that one thing. And all we have to do is just to have this empathy and understanding and be curious to learn and have that open mindset or open heart to say, yes, I've moved across, but what is life teaching me? And life has taught me so much in terms of grounding myself and in terms of gathering wisdom from all different people I've met around the world and compiling them up into my own values, what I want in life and how I want to shape my world and how I want my next generation to live up to. So you actually learn quite a lot. And for me, I've looked at it as a blessing.
And it is a blessing because you have come from such a long way, which we'll get more into that in a minute. But look, being able to really adapt is something vital that we need to be able to understand. If we hold on too tight, our culture is important. Who we are, the culture we're brought up with, is important. But we also need to accept other cultures as we go and learn from them. And I think that's a real beauty about a multicultural society, is that we can, if we choose, to open up to them. So, how do you think when you were young, did you ever imagine this would be your life? That from your whatever you sent as belonging then to where it is now?
Oh, wow. Growing up, there were parts of my life that shaped me deeply, things that weren't talked about, things that you were expected just to endure. As a child, you don't have the language for that. You learn how to survive. And that survival teaches you strength. And it also teaches you to disconnect from yourself. So for a long time, I lived like that, strong on the outside, but unsure who I was, allowed me to be on the inside, and my childhood actually shaped me. And yes, you go through those painful moments in life, but later in stages of life, you realize that my path was meant to start like that, but it's not how I choose to make it end, you know. So you learn through those painful stages of what we are taught as kids to view life. We don't grow up with our own values or our own understanding. It's shaped by our environment, by our parents. So now it's a choice to choose to find your own place in life and choose for yourself. What is that teaching me about life? What do I want to choose? What I want my life to be? And that has given me so much in terms of shifting a perspective, how my parents raised me, how things they didn't talk about it. And now that gave me understanding on how I want to live my life and raise up my kids. Looking at the lessons I've learned, I want to view it in a different way that my kids can come to me and talk about things and be open, which my parents were not open to. So you find that We learn quite a lot, but later in life, we have now to discern and see, okay, I've learned this from my parents, which I don't like at some point, but now I'm learning my own world. And now, even our kids, they pick up and say, I'm going to live my life differently from my mom. But either way, it's giving them that safety, you know, that self assurance that I can move on with my life with my own values. But I've collected some values from my parents, which is self identity. Who am I? And that self identity is loving who you are despite the background.
Yeah, and that's beautiful, making that choice to do so. So let's take a quick break and listen to our sponsors, but also while you're there, subscribe, like, and comment on the show.
When I hit perimenopause, all I heard was doom and decline until I took a sacred pause and I went searching for women who are radiant after menopause, like Dr. Christiane Northrup, Dr. Vandana Shiva, and the late Dr. Gladys McGarry, still shining at 103. In this book, I share their stories and wisdom and the magic that menopause truly holds. 7 Wonders of Menopause is a sacred reminder. You're not ending, you're returning. Available at independent bookshops in Australia and Amazon around the world.
Did you know that only 30% of speakers are women and that only 13% of panels feature women? In order to change that, there is now a directory at womenspeakers.com.au where you can go and search for a speaker. We also have groups on Facebook and LinkedIn under the name Australian Women Speakers, where you can just go and post about your event and women will respond.
Well, we touched a little bit on your childhood, Kabinga, but I know that there's some more that we can dive into. So if you think about your life as having these many layers, which ones do you feel have shaped you the most?
Whew. I think my early childhood at the age of 6. Yeah. You know, being a survivor of sexual abuse, you know, you learn, you are taught at an early age that shame is something that is so shameful that you can't talk about it. And that really shaped me in all stages of life. And looking back now, I no longer live by that. Although it shaped me, but it also made me who I am now. Yes, as painful as it was growing up in us, because every stage of life I've learned a different definition of shame. You know, teenagers, it's a different level of shame. Identity crisis, finding belonging and acceptance. In your 30s, it's like, oh, I'm trying to be comfortable in my own skin, but I'm still confirming and performing for other people and stuff. And 40, I learned a different type of shame where everyone has baggage.
Mm.
Everyone's got flaws. No one is perfect, and no one is immune from challenges. And that was so much profound for me now to get to a point where I need to tell my story, but not from a point of pain, but from a point of inspiring someone who no longer has a voice for themselves. But let me be somebody's hope, somebody's light at the end of the tunnel. And for me, that was quite profound now to tell my story. And telling my story gave me so much power and say, you know what? I don't care what anybody else thinks. Life, there's more to life. So it was now about having self-empathy. And self-empathy, when you have it for yourself, you start seeing yourself, I deserve more in life. I am worth it.
Mm.
And when you have that self-empathy, now it extends towards others with no attachments, no strings to it. You can give it freely. You can see somebody beyond that. And for me, it gave me so much. And yes, there are regrets. I wish parents could have done better to guide me through that, but also that gave me a lesson how I want to guide my kids, to tell them better, to know better, how to look after themselves, to have those deep conversations, and which I've done pretty well with my kids. So that has given me an opening. Yeah.
Yeah. Learning self-empathy, that is powerful. And that's something that we could all do with a little bit more of. I have moments where I definitely need to have a little bit more self-empathy. So, Kabinga, what helped you move from surviving in just getting through and having that early shame to finding the peace that you now have?
Oh, wow. What helped me survive? I think there comes a time, a point in life when performing for others, even in how you tell your story, reaches a kind of a boiling point. You know, you realize you don't live by that anymore. You start to see that everyone is carrying something, you know. And for me, watching others share their story, not just the pain, but how they made it and they made meaning from it, was incredibly inspiring. And it showed me that survival alone wasn't the goal. Growth was, perspective was, healing was. And as I grew older, I stopped retelling my painful parts of my life that no longer define me. Instead, I began to ask a different kind of question. What has this taught me? And that single shift actually changed everything. I moved from my focus from what was done to me towards to what I was becoming despite that, you know. And that was when healing stopped being about revisiting the wound and started being about honoring the wisdom that came with it. So I don't know if that makes sense for you.
Oh,
Yeah.
it does make sense because we can easily get lost in the pain of it, and people live in that pain of it rather than um, and then that's damaging. They can't really live a full and complete life, and they're allowing whatever happened to them to be the winner. Whereas if you can look at it and look at the wisdom that you've learned, look at who you are without that, who you can become, not in spite of it, but because of it. What is the power that you can be? Who is this beautiful person that I can be if I let that be the teacher, not my life? Yeah, really powerful stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. So how do you, I that is beautiful, and it opens up a lot of things. I'm sure a lot of people are going to go, well, yeah, that's well and good, but when they're sitting in the pain, what's that first step when they're sitting in the pain?
Oh, wow. I think for me, what I've observed through my life journey is denial.
Mm-hmm.
I was in denial for a long time of not accepting or acknowledging that past. But the moment I sat down with it, it was like, for one to be better, one must master oneself. And in terms of self mastery, that comes a deep reflection of acknowledgement, acceptance, and understanding. And those are the things I ran away from quite a long time. And I hid my story even from my family, even my husband. He didn't know about it for a long time. But now saying it to myself before I said it to somebody, I think, yes, it did happen. That was the first point of just acknowledgement. And that brings great deep awareness into now how you want to move on.
Mm.
Yes.
That's a good spot for us to start, is acknowledging and accepting that this is who I am, this is part of my life, and take it from there. So let's just jump to our quick chocolate break, a quick commercial break, and just check out our sponsors, and maybe you could follow them as well.
Introducing 123 Read to Me. We give books to children who don't have books so they can succeed. Help us give away books to supported playgroups, kindergartens, schools, community events. Come and sort books. Donate money. $5 equals one book in the hand of a child. Because just one book a day creates clever, kind and confident kids. 123 Read to Me. If this interests you, let's talk.
You've ticked the boxes: career, commitments, calendar that's more packed than your pantry, but something's still missing. In Compassionate Purpose, Andrea Pudding invites you to stop chasing busy and start living with intention. This book is about real fulfillment through small acts of compassion, purpose-driven service, and meaning that last. No pressure, no perfection, just purpose with heart. Compassionate Purpose, Discovering a Life of Fulfillment. Search for Andrea Pudding on Amazon.
So, Kabingi, we've talked a lot about that letting go and being able to, well, not letting go, but to find the wisdom in it. So let's move to the next point. Where do you go? Part of people dealing with trauma is that they've got to find a place within them to allow anyone else involved to release them in some way so that they can move forward. So what is it that you can add to that? How do you do that?
Oh, wow. And part of the other thing which I talked about, acknowledgement or acceptance, was forgiveness. And for me, that was a hard core case. Like, I did not want to forgive, because that meant, for me, it was like letting my offenders, I get away with it. So I was holding on to that forgiveness and forgiveness. Like, if I let it go, I'm accepting that it was okay and everything. I just want to punish them. But in the way, I wasn't punishing them. I was punishing myself. And what healing taught me through that, and what surprised me the most, is how profound self-empathy and forgiveness go hand in hand. You know, self-empathy then widened into empathy for others, but I had to forgive. And even in my book, when I wrote, forgiveness was the last chapter I had to dive into. And forgiveness is a release, not for the offender or somebody who's done you wrong, but for yourself. You're breaking the chains out of bondage. You're setting yourself free. It's not accepting or acknowledging what happened or what they did to you was okay, but it's you moving on to say, I release myself. And that is the most important things in terms of healing. It's letting go. As hard as and challenging as it is, but it's one of the most freedom, which I was like, why did I take so long to forgive myself and to forgive anyone else? You know? And especially, it also gave me empathy to my mother and say, she did what she knew best. Because I held her accountable for a long time to say, you should have protected me more, you know? And that gave me, a lot of peace, inner peace, to move on. Yeah.
So it is the hardest thing, absolutely. And forgiving yourself is always a tough one. So do you think that's the last thing people should do, or should they try to do that earlier on? Because you said it was the last thing in your book because it was the hardest thing.
I think you can't rush that. I think you have to sit in first in the acknowledgement part, in the accepting part,
Yeah.
especially finding help, either speaking to somebody, a counselor or a coach who's going to guide you through that. And I think the more you sit in that and you accept and acknowledge, then forgiveness comes in, because it's not a forceful process. You can't rush it. It has to come naturally. You have to feel ready about it. And for me, after going back to my childhood, speaking to my inner 6-year-old, saying, what happened to you was not your fault, because I was waiting for years for someone to say that to me. But she also needed to hear that from me, that you went through that. It was not your fault. I want you to know you are loved. You are valued. You are amazing. And for me now, entering to teenagers to say, you are just searching yourself. And searching yourself has led me to where I am. And it's like letting go of that inner child, giving her freedom that she deserves. And when that inner child is happy and settled, then you can move on, because we grown-ups, adulthood, we live our lives under that 6-year-old. And that 6-year-old, all she wanted was that sense of belonging, that sense of love, that sense of belonging. And now I had the opportunity to go back and just sit down with her and just tell her what I wanted to hear. And for me, that was so liberating and so freeing, that I gave her that point in life to say, thank you for being resilient. You did what you could to survive. And that survival has led me to where I am. And now and that peace with yourself, with your inner child, forgiveness now becomes a new stepping stone. And for me, it became easier, because I approved myself, I acknowledged myself, and I love myself despite all those flaws, and say it's part of life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. And you talk about, when we've spoken before, you've talked about not needing to fix somebody else. So not needing to fix those that you've forgiven. And I think that's an important thing.
Yes. Yes. And in the sense, all along in my life, I think I was trying to fix other people, thinking if they become what I want, or just listen or do things my way, I'll get some level of validation, that level of belonging, or that level of respect, that you are listening to me, But I realized later, actually, it was this year, I had the profound sitting down, just reflecting, and say, how come I'm so comfortable within myself now? It was because I've accepted who I am. And in that turn, it has helped me to accept people, to let people be who they are. And they're in their own journey of life. And I can't rush them. They have to discover for themselves. But the same way I've discovered myself, all I can do is just show empathy and understanding, and just be curious within that journey.
And that's beautiful. And that can lead us to a Brew the Change challenge for this week. So this week, I encourage you to have a chocolate and a cuppa with somebody, and just let them be who they are. Don't try to fix them, correct them, or try to change them. Just let them be and listen to them. So I'd like to thank you, Kabinga, for being on the show. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you, and it's been very powerful and meaningful. And I'd like you to share, how can people get your book and get in touch with you?
Well, they can find me on Amazon, Booktopia, everywhere. I'm on socials under the same name, Kabinga Mazaba. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And once they Google my name, they'll be able to find my book everywhere online. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Easy to find. Kabinga Mazabi. So until next time, I'd like to just have a chocolate, have a cuppa, and let love be the loudest voice.